Today, we are diving into something that sounds, well, a little weird, right? The idea that couples sleeping in separate beds could actually be a good thing. We're going to unpack this paradox, how a little bit of distance might be the secret to getting closer than ever. For most of us, this is the first place our minds go. The shared bed. It's this huge symbol of intimacy, of being a unit. So when you hear a couple sleeps apart, it's easy to think, uh-oh, trouble in paradise. But what if that entire assumption is just plain wrong? So, let's start with this really great little story. It comes from the author of our source material, who was on a family trip in Toronto. They're at the hotel check-in desk asking for 2 rooms next to each other for their family. The clerk finds them a couple of rooms, but then she kind of hesitates and apologizes. See, the clerk was sorry because one room had 2 small beds, and the other had a big king-size bed. She just assumed the couple would be stuck with the king. But when the family said that was totally fine, the clerk looked so relieved, and then she let them in on this little secret. A whole lot of couples just don't want to share a bed anymore. Now, this got the author's attention, so they asked her a bit more, and the clerk shared this witty observation she's made over the years. She noticed a pattern. The more money a couple seemed to have, the more physical space there was between them at night. First, separate beds. Then, with even more money, separate rooms. And there it is, the punchline she delivered with a little smile. Now, obviously this was a joke, but it's a great way to kick off our big question today. What is the deal with independence, personal space, and staying together in a modern relationship? This whole idea of separate rooms, it isn't some crazy new trend. Not at all. In fact, if you look back, it was pretty much the standard for the upper class. So let's take a quick peek into history. Take a place like Coe Hall, this incredible historic mansion in New York. The husband and wife, the master and mistress of the house, had their bedrooms in totally separate corners of the floor. And it wasn't because they were mad at each other, it was just practical. Their daily schedules were completely different, and having their own space just made life easier and more harmonious. And this wasn't just some Western thing. Let's look at the famous Chinese scholar Liang Shiqiu and his wife Han Jingqing. These two were madly in love, but their personal rhythms, they were from different planets. Just look at this breakdown. He's up before the sun, needs total quiet to write. She's a social butterfly, out late and doesn't wake up till noon. Can you imagine them sharing a room? It would have been a disaster of constant disruptions. By having their own bedrooms, they got to live the lives they wanted, and their relationship thrived because of it. Okay, so let's fast forward to today. That same idea, that practical need for separation, is showing up again, but now it's driven by our modern sense of independence, both personal and financial. The more independent we are, the more we really value our own space and our own way of doing things. You can see a really clear example of this happening in Japan. The old school ideas about marriage are changing, and they're changing fast. It's not just about separate rooms anymore. It's about choosing to live separate lives together. Get this, 40%, 40, of all married couples in Japan now have separate bank accounts. They call it having 2 wallets. And that signals a massive shift toward individual freedom inside a partnership. People are coming together as equals, and they want to hold on to their own identity. And the trend gets even stronger when you look at higher income couples. That number jumps to 50%. It makes sense, right? For partners with big, demanding careers, that financial separation often comes with the desire for physical separation, like separate bedrooms, just to make their crazy schedules work. Okay, so we've looked at the history, we've looked at the data, but what does this actually look like in real life? Let's get into a couple of personal stories that show just how sleeping apart can make a relationship stronger. So, there's this couple, let's call them the Globetrotters. The husband works overseas half the year and is a total night owl, always reading or working late. He says the time alone is absolutely essential for him to recharge. And the result for their marriage? The distance actually makes their time together that much more special. He says every single reunion feels like a honeymoon. And then there's this really powerful story about the author's in-laws. She was a super light sleeper, and he loved to listen to the radio all night long. You can just imagine the constant frustration. But then they moved into a bigger house and got separate rooms, and their whole relationship changed. They weren't fighting for sleep anymore. They actually became more loving. And every morning when they saw each other, it felt fresh and new, like a conscious choice to come together. So when you put all of this together, what does it really mean for the long haul of a relationship? Well, maybe we just need to think about togetherness differently. It's not one static thing. It's more like a rhythm that changes over a lifetime. I think this timeline is just beautiful. It frames our lives as a cycle. We start out sleeping alone. Then, in marriage, we come together. But then, as we mature, sleeping apart can feel like you're dating again. You're making that choice to be together each day. And eventually, in old age, we return to sleeping alone. When you look at it this way, sleeping apart isn't a failure. It's just a natural, even beautiful phase of life. And that brings us to our final thought here. What's the big takeaway? It might just be this powerful idea. In life, and especially in love, you either get something or you learn something. Maybe you get that perfect partnership where you happily share a bed for 60 years. That's wonderful. Or maybe you learn that real intimacy isn't about always being in the same room. Maybe it's about deep respect for each other's needs, giving each other space to be yourselves, and finding a unique rhythm that just works for the two of you. And really, what could possibly be more loving than that?